Hey friend, before we jump into today's episode, I want to take a minute to thank those of you who reached out to me last week with all of your kind birthday wishes. And I especially want to thank those of you who left ratings and reviews for the podcast. It means so much to me that you're here, that you're listening, that you're taking the time to encourage others to listen. But also, if you haven't left one yet, you still can. We have this running joke in our house when it's Greg's birthday. He loves to remind us, hey, it's my birthday month. Well, it's my birthday month, so I'm going to keep asking for those ratings and reviews to come in. Let's try to get to 100 by the end of the month. So if you haven't left your rating and review yet, would you consider doing that today? It's one way you can help spread the word about Find Hope Here. See, Apple plays this little game, and it goes like this. If you have lots of reviews, we'll share your podcast with everyone else. And if you don't, we're not going to show it to anyone. Leaving a 5-star rating and review would be a gift to me, and it would be a way for you to partner with me in spreading hope. Thanks, friend. Oh, and if you're not signed up to follow the show, make sure you hit that little plus button at the top right corner of your screen.
I think you need to think about your life like this. We only have one life, and it goes quickly, much more quickly than you think. You have a decision to make about how you handle every day of your life, both as it models itself to others, as it fills you with God's presence, as it serves others in the best kind of ways. Think about this. The phone comes between you and your children, between your children and life and moral principle. It comes between marriages. It keeps you from looking at the natural world. It kills time, which God says we're not supposed to be killing time. He doesn't say you have to go read a commentary. He just says, sit on a bench and look at the sky I gave you. You need to know how alive you are and how rich your soul is.
Hi, friend. You're listening to Find Hope Here. I'm your host, Teresa Whiting, author, speaker, ministry leader, friend, and fellow struggler. This is a podcast about the messy, complicated, painful parts of life, but also the beautiful, joy-filled hope that Jesus promises. Each week, we dig deep into God's Word together and talk about how His truth impacts our everyday lives. I'm not going to ask you to sit with me and have coffee because I seem to have my best conversations while I'm just doing life. So I'd love to hang out with you as you walk or fold laundry or drive to work. You're invited to join me in pursuing the hope God promises. No matter where you are or where you've been, I pray you always find hope here. Let's jump into today's episode. Welcome back, friends. Today I'm speaking with Dr. Rosset again, and we're friends now, so I'm going to call her Rosie. I'm so excited about what Rosie shares because her words are life-giving, instructive, and wise. If you haven't listened to last week's episode yet, you want to go back and listen to that first because that will put all of this in context. So we're talking a lot about how technology affects our souls, our hearts, our bodies. How can we guard ourselves? What are the boundaries? You mentioned we need to put up boundaries. Like, let's give the listeners, people who haven't thought about this, somebody who's coming into this and listening to this conversation saying, what do you even mean? Like, what are boundaries we can put up? Let's talk about some practical ideas.
Well, the very first thing you need to do is to stop and look at just how much you use it. You need to think from the beginning of it should not be the first thing you do. Pick up. Buy a clock. Buy a watch. Many of my students do. Do not let the phone, the phone is never in my bedroom when I go to bed. It's off and recharging. My computer's away. It's not even good for you for sleep is another thing. The sleep habits of my students are so interrupted. It's unbelievable. Yeah, so get the phone away from you. Really study, maybe make a chart of all day long how much you grab it, how much you use it, how much you're Googling, ridiculous things you don't even need to know. I would do, if you can't think about doing anymore. I would do a 24-hour media fast just to discover how nervous you are, how cheated you feel, how out of touch you feel, how lonely, how you don't know if somebody is, I don't know, I don't do any of this, but Facebooking you and liking whatever you put on there. Stop with the pictures. Stop taking pictures and enter the presentness of the moment. I was in South Dakota this year, where Rushmore, Crazy Horse, Custer State Park, the Badlands. It was just one of the great American vacations of my life. And so many people were taking pictures instead of sitting there. I don't take pictures. You never look at them anyway. It's not like the old times when they were black and white or color and you put them in scrapbooks. You just have pictures so you can post them. That's a bad reason. It makes you nervous. Just sit there and take it in. So the boundaries on your life should start with a fast, which will give you full recognition, which I would write down, of just how badly you've been abusing it. Ask yourself, never should any human being take out a phone in front of another human being they're having a conversation with. Christ would never have done that. Never, ever have done that. It's rude. One preacher said, it's sin. We no longer expect to be heard, nor do we expect to hear. Something is always interrupting. The phone has precedence. So start to think about how this has affected relations. If you're a family person, how often do you have a meal? You should have a meal once a day with as many families as you can get, that is cooked, by the way. You know, these days, go to Trader Joe's, get yourself a frozen package if you have to, but do something, and then allow no phones around the table whatsoever. I mean, the boundaries come from absolute truth-telling. What have I surrendered to this thing? How many of my values have been influenced by this? What does it make me buy? What does it make me want to dress like? What does it make me lust after? I don't mean sexually. I mean just things, you know. How many movies am I watching? How many series am I watching? How much is that the subject of the conversation? When was the last time I walked? I walk without the phone. I live in the city. I don't exactly live ghetto, but it's close. I am near Loyola University, which is that, but I don't walk. So what the steps? You go once, you know how many steps you did. You don't need to keep doing that. Otherwise, it interrupts something. Walk without a phone. And you know what? You got to, like I said, this is ruthless. You got to die of something. When your time comes, your time comes. You know, you'll die the way you're going to die. So the phone does not save you. Jesus saves you.
Yes. You were talking earlier about trust, how we've transferred our trust from God to
the
our
phone.
phones.
So parents no longer have to trust God for their children because they have a phone, and they overcheck on them, and they make them too dependent, and they're too close to their children. And it's not the genuine closeness of anticipation. I think I said that I used to have old cars, you know, I still do, but you know, you'd go on a trip and you'd go on a 500, 600, you didn't have a phone. It was still a a telephone booth. And so sometimes it was bad weather. You'd slide off the road. You'd have a flat tire. And somebody would rescue you. And it was a great story. We don't have any stories anymore. We're losing our wonder. Everything centers around what you watched, the music that you were listening to, the text, the Instagram. Everything is overblown and nothing is very creative. And we had all these wonderful stories about rescue in an old car. Somebody that, yes. I have a million of them. So we don't trust anymore. You have to say to yourself, and people get irritated with people when they can't reach them on the phone. My best friend doesn't do any of it, and I can't make her. So it is what it is. I have to go to her house. Right. Gives me some walking time. Right. I'm deeply offended by what has happened to sacred space. I almost can't believe it. It's blasphemy. I go to a fairly upscale church. I'm not upscale. It's way out of my social class, but the preaching's fantastic. And at my age, I go for the preaching. And I don't have any kids that are depending on me going for other reasons. So I go into this very educated, intelligent church, and communion, they do communion every Sunday, and all of a sudden, one day there was this young, very good-looking guy, I still do notice, sitting beside me, and he took out his phone. I thought, oh, he must be following along the Bible on the phone. I don't like that either. I really think if I was a preacher, I'm not, I would look at my congregation and say, I'm going to suggest that we all go pretty phone-free. and that we have a physical Bible in our hands. They're in the pew right there. Use them, because this is an interruptive thing. But communion came, the elements are being served, and he is texting on his phone. I see it every Sunday I'm in church. These are adults. I am so offended. First of all, it offends me, which makes me cranky at communion time. So that's his fault, of course, not mine. I know better. And then I think, this is the house of God. This is sacred space. I don't get to do that. I don't get to do that. And I see that constantly. I see it in chapel all the time. And even now, pastors are inviting people to text other people about what they've said. I forget the word. Go online and do this. I don't know. I think there ought to be. I speak in chapel every few years on technology. I did last January. I was surprised they brought me in to do it. And I always say to my students, if you cannot control your phones for the next 30 minutes, hate me all you want. I don't think I'll bore you. You can sit there and hate me. But I said, at least you're hating me or you're doing something. But don't be on your phone. Just this 30 minutes, I'm asking you for restraint. Please put them away. Now, some of them won't. And it makes people mad. It hits a raw nerve, which frankly, that tells you a lot. So I think that pastors ought to be far more aware and ought not to be making concessions. I know that there are special issues these days with nursery and mothers who have to, it's mandated that I know that there are complexities. I'm not stupid. But what I will tell you is that my students respond to this. And I would say 80, maybe higher % of the response is positive. They are horrified by where they've been. They know, I don't know that they change. I have had several young men give up their because of the pornography temptation for flip phones. I have had that happen. And I would say across the board, I am almost never assaulted. Every once in a while, somebody insults me. They usually use my age as okay, fine. I'm glad to be my age. But it goes well.
It's just so much. I feel like I can ask you so many questions and follow up with so many of those things. But one of the things I'd love to ask is, we're talking about the struggles, the anxiety, the breakdown of relationships, the lack of imagination. There's so many things that are happening that maybe people aren't even realizing.
I don't think they do. My students will say, I had this one student, she said, I go home and after I've done this and I wanted to change. She's from an upscale home where her father's an elder, her mother's involved in women's ministries. And she says, the only way I can connect with my siblings is through watching a series with them. And she says, I've said to my mother, couldn't we have a meal? And she said, I can't get her. She feels like I'm being self-righteous. And I've tried to do it. And she said, the only way I can connect with my mother is watch one of the series she's watching. I mean, I have, that is not uncommon, where my father disappears into his office and doesn't come out. That is not uncommon. I'd say it's the exception when there have been boundaries and controls. The parents have joined the system. And they are the ones who are instructing. And I'm not being judgmental. I don't have any idea what I would have done. I hope I would have done it well. But what we have to do is realize and fight it like an enemy.
Right. I think one of the things I hope that this podcast is doing is just opening people's eyes to think about it. We're like robots. We've been fed this, and we're just like marching to this drumbeat of culture that's
exactly
ruining
right.
us.
Read one good book on it. There are gobs of articles now talking about small children, every age group, what it's done. Even it's totally secular. Jonathan Haidt, I think it's Haidt, The Anxious Generation. Another one is The Shallows by Nicholas Carr. Read one good book.
Yes.
To make yourself aware.
Okay, speaking of good books, tell us, I heard a little rumor that you're thinking about writing a book. So what would it be? Because it would be different than some of these books you're mentioning.
Most of the books in the articles are based on research and based on accumulated data to prove what's been done to the consciousness of children and teenagers and marriage and family, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not a researcher. The collection of these 275 pages that I have, which increases every semester, the reports, I have thought it would make a very good book, and have been told that even by some prominent names that have heard about it, have encouraged me, said they'd endorse me, et cetera, et cetera. So I've written the introduction, which I gave to you.
Yes.
And that one, I've had 2 or 3 critiques on how to change it. I realized after you enjoined me to get going and get off my duff and do this, I have time. I have time. I'm retired. I have time. I've got the one on the family is pretty much done. The one on music is in good shape. And the one on romance is well started. Mm-hmm. So I have 4, and I just need to find the categories. And you gave me the idea about sacred space, what it's done to sacred space. There are places the phone should not enter, where the elements are being served, etc. And because we've got to teach children to listen, pay attention. They've got to have their concentration on something. They won't be able to raise their own children if they do that. They can't pick up the phone when their child's in distress. It's a concentration issue. So I get an encouragement every 3 months or so from somebody who says, why aren't you doing this? And I think you suggested that is maybe some force keeping you from doing this valuable thing.
Well, I just think it would be so helpful and eye-opening because, like you said, this is based on what the students are saying.
This is not me. In fact, when I went to do a podcast on music, Chris Fabry wasn't so hot on it because he knows I'm really grind this one to death. He said, well, I said, Chris, this isn't me. What I am bringing to the table is hundreds of remarks. Students, this is your children talking about what happened in their home, what's happened to them, what they wish were different.
Yes.
This isn't me.
Right. And that's what I think is so
wonderful.
I just want to read that book. And I want all the other, 20-somethings to read that book and high schoolers because they're next in line.
Yeah.
This is coming for them. We were talking about practical ideas. And you mentioned the idea of a media fast, like taking 24 hours. Mm-hmm. What would you say to somebody who, they think, oh, I'm going to do that. And then they go into a panic attack. Like, I think that could be a common response of like, I can't be without this phone. Have you seen that in your students?
My students do feel that way. And I think if I were a parent, if I had been used to just monitoring my entire life, not by God, but by a phone, you could go into a panic attack. I'm sort of a little bit of a panicker if I don't know people are safe. I want to know that my world is safe. A lot of people resist that in my life, which I'm kind of glad for. I would say if you haven't gotten through that panic, you're avoiding something major. And what you have to say to yourself is, can God handle this panic? Is somebody's life really in my hands if I believe what the Lord told us about how he's the controller of life? I better get through this or I'm not anywhere with God. I have not gotten through this. I've suffered over that myself. I've made myself get through that. The more stronger we get, the more we depend upon his word. Pray instead of going to the phone. Mm. And I don't say that piously. I think prayer is hard. But at least blurt out whatever you can to the Lord. I don't mean you have to sit there intently for 20 minutes. You've got to find out where you're at.
So do you find that with students who they get through, they get over that initial, angst and stress of having to do this? What are some of the things that come out after they get through that?
They go to creative activity. I don't know if I said this earlier or not, but they may play an instrument or they may begin to have conversations with people longer. They realize that all the things they had been missing in life, like they'll have the conversation in that 10-minute thing instead of scrolling. They'll talk to the teacher. They'll go out and sit on a bench. They'll write a poem. They'll read something before, especially going to bed. I say nobody should be going to bed scrolling on a phone to sleep. Read yourself to sleep. Pray yourself to sleep. Don't do something technological. You won't sleep well to begin with, and you won't really rest. And don't make that the first thing you see in the morning. Buy a clock, buy a watch, get it out of the bedroom. So, and then they say they have relief, that they don't have to be in touch with so many people, that they don't have to check. They almost feel as though they're being able to check on somebody is their peace. They've said that. This is my peace. That's religious language. this is what makes me feel okay. The phone is making you feel okay. That means your sense of well-being is very shattered.
Yeah, yeah. I think one of the things you're describing is they go from FOMO, that fear of missing out, to what I like to call JOMO, the joy of missing out.
The joy, they feel relief.
Joy of like, I don't have to know everything and be connected.
They often use the metaphor prison. I felt let out of prison.
Wow. I'm so excited. I'm confident that this book is coming, and I can't wait to read it. So.
If somebody published it.
It seems like the current of our world is just sweeping in this direction. How do we resist that? How do you resist getting just caught in the current? Like, first of all, where do you think we're headed? And then what can we do about it?
I think with artificial intelligence, many things are over. I think it's now controlling probably elections, worldwide maneuvers, the family. Once they've got the family, and technology was an easy way to destroy the family, the nuclear family, and then to infiltrate subtly because people aren't very well informed. They get most of their news from leading media sources. I don't think there's any exaggeration we can do of how bad it will get and how much it will have to be restrained. But I have been in 3 situations this summer, beautiful family situations, where I never saw a phone. One of them, the grandfather and the grandmother had 50 grandchildren. 12 children, 50 grandchildren. We talked for 4 hours with a bunch of them and no phones. They had to fight and be purposeful and instill in them and provide them with creative activity and the outdoors and taking them places and giving them. You can't take away something without substituting something. I tell my students that if you take this away, you better have something creative to start doing.
Right. Oh, I love that. Not that we did all of this right, but it makes me think about when our kids were like 10 years old, maybe 12, I think that's when the iPhone came out. I can't remember, They were young. They were young. But all their friends had phones. Everybody had phones. And then eventually my kids, when they got licenses, they got phones. And
that's a good measure.
We had something we called the bowl of life. And when my kids' friends would come over for sleepovers or hangout days, I would put this wooden bowl on the table and I'd say, everybody's phone goes in the bowl of life. And they would fight me on it, They would call it the bowl of death. We have to put our phone in the bowl of death. But now they all thank me. And they talk about how much fun they had. Yeah. And then they would go to other friends' houses and come back and I'd be like, how was it? And they'd be like, well, it's boring because everybody was just on their phone the whole time.
That's right.
And I think having a system where when you have kids in your home, you put out, call it whatever you want, call it the bowl of death. But you know what, guys? My reason for calling it the bowl of life was because I said, I want you to live the life.
That's
right
so
in front
good.
of you. Like, live your life. Live with the people in front of you. Why are you texting your friends that aren't here? Be with the friends that are here. And so...
And little bits of information that make no difference whatsoever. And nobody cares in 3 seconds. Well, having had your son and knowing your son, you have a beautiful son. He really is. He's exceptional. His face is full of freshness. Yeah.
Yeah. He's a gift.
Yeah.
And, one of the things we did was just we tried to do family dinners, phone-free zones. No phones at the table. No phones in the bedroom. But... everybody's adults now, and everybody's making their own decisions. And and it's not like I did it well or I am doing it well. I feel like it's a constant struggle.
It's a constant struggle.
I think I'm not going to be on the phone at the table, and then I get a call or I get a ding or whatever, and then all of a sudden I look down, I'm like, my phone is right next to me at the table. Like, no, I don't want this. Mm-hmm. So I definitely think intentionality, but having a plan.
You have to have a plan, and you have to stick to it through discomfort.
Yes. I was talking to Caleb about these questions, and he said, I would love to know Dr. DeRosé's theology of technology. So this question is from him.
Yeah, no, that's good. Well, I come from an easier point, but I know a lot of people older than I am that abuse technology, so at my age or older. I really believe that, and I'm having to work on it because I have to be on the computer so much for teaching, even limitedly, or for writing or for doing things. I sometimes go to it, and I'm a single woman, so you're alone in your house, and you sometimes go to take that up. But more and more, I sit somewhere in a chair and don't do it. Or I never have my phone ever in the bedroom. Never go to bed with my phone. I just don't do it. I try to walk outside when I do my exercise without it. I try to keep it hidden in my purse. I never ever talk to a student with it out unless I say to them, I have a doctor's appointment coming up. Somebody is calling me. I give them the reason why it's on. So I just try to be constantly aware. Mm-hmm. But I also have never been a Facebooker. I don't even know how to do Instagram. I'm not infected. I have to keep myself uninfected.
Yes, that's a good way to put it.
Uninfected, yeah.
So is there anything else that I haven't mentioned that you want to talk about? Any other topics, any other of your findings that you feel like people need to know?
I think you need to think about your life like this. We only have one life, and it goes quickly, much more quickly than you think. And the only thing that counts about your life is what you have done for others, how much you have enjoyed the beauty that God gave us. I'm not one of those people that says you only serve others, you only do functional things. We have this gorgeous, marvelous world to enjoy. And you have a decision to make, and that enriches your spirit. You have a decision to make about how you handle every day of your life, both as it models itself to others, as it fills you with God's presence, as it serves others in the best kind of ways. Think about this. The phone comes between you and your children, between your children and life and moral principle. It comes between marriages. It keeps you from looking at the natural world. It kills time, which God says we're not supposed to be killing time. He doesn't say you have to go read a commentary. He just says, sit on a bench and look at the sky I gave you. You need to know how alive you are and how rich your soul is. Is it you or is it the phone? What is there? How much are you growing?
I love that. I love that. I would love to kind of close by having you speak directly to the listener who knows, I don't have a healthy relationship with technology. I think most of us would say that if we're honest, like it's because it's such a battle.
I agree with that.
We're constantly fighting it.
I agree.
But what would you say to the person who wants to have a healthier relationship with technology?
I would say to you that it's going to be hard and you're not going to conquer it in one day. So what I would say to you is if you can't fast for 48 hours, fast for 12. That will take you from beyond, and you can make 8 of those sleeps. Well, nobody sleeps 8 hours anymore, but don't do it, say, one night before bed and discover. Don't make that the first thing you look at. Don't take it with you to the bathroom. I understand that's a big deal. Instead of looking up a recipe online, look it up in an old cookbook. Do something. Start to just introduce little physical things. Go on a walk without it. Note the panic. Note how you feel that maybe you're not going to be okay. Get through that. Start in little increments. You can't swallow it whole. But absolutely for sure, if you can do a 12-hour fast and then a 24-hour fast and keep writing down what you're discovering. If you're a family person, you absolutely have no time to spare. Stop with the phone with your infants. Look into their eyes. Enjoy them. That infanthood goes away so soon. Don't take a walk with the dog with your phone. Enjoy your dog. Enjoy something without the phone. So start in little increments and keep building. And read a good book so you really get the shock.
So thank you so much.
You're very welcome. This has been lovely. I'm quite honored.
I am honored. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did, but I kind of doubt it. I was so excited to have the opportunity to meet Rosie in her office and have this conversation. Thanks for putting up with the less than stellar audio, but I think you'd agree that the content was fabulous. If this episode has you thinking about your relationship with your phone and you realize you'd like to make some changes, I have a few resources I've created for you. First is a free download called 24 Ways to Break Up with Your Smartphone. It gives you small, simple steps that you can take today to create a little bit of distance between yourself and your smartphone. Second, I want to recommend that you listen to a couple podcast episodes I did with my friend Sandy Cooper over on the Balanced Momcast. We talked all about the 40-day flip phone challenge that I did with my son Caleb last January. I'll also put a link to that episode. And third, and this is a big one, I'm inviting you to join me for a 28-day flip phone challenge during the month of February. If you're overwhelmed by the constant pull of technology and you're ready to do something about it, this challenge will serve as a reset. You can find the links to all these things, including the free download, the podcast episodes I mentioned, and all the details about the Flip Phone Challenge in the show notes. As always, I'll be putting links to all the information in the show notes, which you can find on my website at teresawhiting.com/listen. Or if you sign up for my weekly podcast update, I will send all the links, all the books, all the ways to connect with our guest straight into your inbox. So maybe you want to sign up for my weekly podcast updates. In closing, I want to leave you with this prayer from Romans 15:13. May the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace in believing, so that by the power of the Holy Spirit, you may abound in hope.